Hey everyone, welcome to channel Qautomation. In previous session, we have seen creation of folder structure and we also understood what are the different components we will be using in our framework creation. So if you remember, this is the high level architecture of the framework which we decided to automate these test cases. So these are a sample test cases which we have taken, which includes creation of user, updation, getting that user details with the ID and deletion of that user. So all these 4 5 APIs we have considered for our automation. We have their request body and responses also. So in Postman collection also we have already seen this manually executing all those APIs. So we have create user, get user by ID. We also have update user and delete user. So we are going to automate these APIs. So we have designed our framework structure. In today's session, we will see and we will actually start writing code in different files. So today we will focus upon property file and config reader. First, let's understand why property file and config readers are important. So we just have to focus on this part basically today. In our framework architecture, we are going to create test cases separately and all the logic which will be required to write those test cases, that is update operation, create operation, delete operation, all those CRUD operation will be placed in user CRUD service class. So user CRUD service class will take all the required details and it will call the API and it will return the response. So that main operation will be performed inside this user CRUD service. And in test cases, we will mainly perform assertions and validations of expected and actual responses. So when we write the user CRUD service, there will be some elements that we will require multiple times. So instead of repeating those or hard coding those values, we can use property file. So property file can be used to store some of the properties in the form of key and value, and we can fetch those property values inside this user CRUD service. To fetch those value, we need config reader class. So I will just design this config reader class. We will also add property file and then we will see how we can fetch the data from property file inside this user CRUD service class. So this is our high level architecture. So today we will focus on this part. If you see, we have user CRUD service class, user CRUD test class. So this will be actual test case. So user CRUD test. So if you remember in our last session, we have created different packages. We have also seen what is main Java, main resources, test Java and test resources folder. So in com.api.service, we will create user CRUD service class, which will actually have create, update, delete. All those class methods will be present inside this user CRUD service class. And inside this class, it will have different methods. For example, create user, get user by ID, update user and delete user. And whenever we have to call the API, we need some information like base URI, headers. Headers might include tokens as well, request body, and what is the request type, whether it's a GET request, POST request. That is the basic details which we need in this test methods. Not test method, these are basically service methods. It will get this information and it will call that specific endpoint. and it will get the response. And that response we will use in user CRUD test operation. Actual CRUD test which will be performed, validation and expected and actual responses inside this user CRUD test class. That we will see in coming session. But in today's session, we will mainly focus upon how to fetch values from config.property files by using config reader. So these are all different files that will be placed in different packages. So they will be communicating with each other. So in user CRUD service, we need base URI, we need headers, we need token, body, request type, etc. So in today's session, what we will do, we will put base URI and token. So if you see our API collection, for all these APIs, we have to pass one authorization token. This bearer token we can get from GoRest website. So if you go to their website, gorest.co.in, you just click on this get your access token. After clicking on get your access token, you have to authenticate with any of this one thing. You can authenticate with Google, Microsoft account or GitHub account. Once you authenticate, you will receive one token, and that token we have to pass inside the API. Inside the authorization headers, we have to pass that token here. So similarly, when we are automating this API in REST assured also, we have to pass that token. So that is also required. So that token we will not use in user CRUD service for every test. We have to put that token. But instead of hard coding that token inside these methods, what is recommended approach is we should place that token value in config.properties file. So config.properties file is basically store some information in the form of key value. So base URI, token, we can place it in config.properties, and by using config reader class, we can read those value and use it in user CRUD service class in all the methods. So that I will show you practically. So two values we can store in config.properties, base URI and token. So the APIs which we have selected, right? These are the APIs. And these are the test cases for users module. So in real time application, you will have different type of modules. So there can be users module, there can be product module, there can be payment module. So after this base URI, there can be different modules which are present. So users, products, different endpoints can be present. But for all those modules, the base URI is constant. So if you see up to this point, https gorest.co.in/public/v2, this is a base URI. Now users module can change. So if you have multiple modules, this users can change to products, payments or anything, whatever your application is having. But base URI will remain constant. So that's why we will store base URI also in properties file. So in properties file, we will store base URI and token. Value of base URI and value of token will be placed in config.properties. We will use config reader to read those value, and those value will be used in this user CRUD service class inside this service methods. So let's see practically, then I will explain you one by one how to write config reader, config.properties, and how to read those value, verify those value, whether they are able to fetch those value or not inside user CRUD service class. So let's go to Eclipse. This is the project structure which we have created in our previous sessions. So we have to create config.properties file and configreader.java file. So property file we can create inside src/main/resources folder. So let's create a new file inside this. Let's create new file and name it as config.properties. So it will create config.properties file inside src main resources folder, because resources, whatever resource we require will be present in resources folder. So that's why property file will be present in resources folder, src main resources. And we have to create one more file, that is config reader class. So we can create that class inside this package com.api.config. Right click on it, new class. I am naming it as config reader. So this is a class which we have to create, that is config reader class. So that class got created, config reader.java. This class will be used to read the values from config.properties file. So now let's see what is the code which we have to write in config reader class. So let me first write the code and then I will explain line by line what that means. So first I am creating private static properties object. Let's import properties from Java util. So this is properties class present in Java utils, which has this properties type of variable. After that I will create one static block, and inside this static block I will write the code to read the config.properties file. So let's create file input stream. This is again Java utils package. So file input stream is mainly used for loading the files to read the data from those files. So I will just load the file. So it should know where is the config.properties file placed in my project. So that's why I'm just adding this. So new file input stream. I'm creating file input stream FIS object, and inside this I have to pass path of the config.properties file, which is present inside src main resources slash config dot properties. So let's import file input stream from java.io package. So this FIS object knows which file to refer. Now next step is, let's surround it with try catch, because sometimes exception might occur if file path is incorrect. That's why we have added try catch block. Now next step is creating properties object which we have created. So we have defined properties type of object here, but let's instantiate it. So properties equal to new properties. So we have created and instantiated the class object for properties class, and then we have to load properties dot load, in which we have to pass that file stream input class object. Let's save it. Now next step is we have to create one method, public static string type of method, which will return the value in the form of string. Get property, which will take key. Key means whatever property we want to fetch, that key value we have to pass in this method, and it will return properties dot get property method and the key which we are passing it. So what this will do, we take it outside of this block. That's it. So if you see, let me just format it so that you will understand in better manner. So this is a config reader class which we have created. Now in this class, config reader class, what we are doing. So let me just explain line by line. So let's see it. First of all, we have imported some packages. So package com.api.config. So what this will do? This basically tells the system that this tells the Java that this class belongs to com.api.config package. The class which we have created belongs to this specific package. Package means it's a folder name that help you to organize your classes. After that, we have imported some of the default Java package classes. So these are the different imports we have to use that will automatically suggested by Eclipse as well. So these import lines will allow you to use classes from the Java library. For example, file input stream. It is used to read data from file. So what we are going to do? We are going to read data from config.property file. So that's why we have to import this file input stream class. It is used to read the data from a file. IO exception or file not found exception. These are basically exception classes. So this will basically handle exception in case some path is incorrectly entered. So at that point we will know why the error or exception occurred. So to catch those input output errors, for example file not found etc., we have to use this IO exception. And properties is a special class for storing key value pairs like base URI, token or whatever values we want to store in config.properties. So that's the initial part, importing a package and some of the Java imports which are automatically suggested by Eclipse. So each one has some purpose. File not found exception catching, IO exception catching. Properties is again a class which is normally used to store data values in the form of key pairs, key value pairs. After that, we have created one static block. What we have created? This is the code which we have created. So private static properties. What this line denotes? So we have declared a variable name properties of type properties. So properties is a class. We have created one variable properties of that properties class type. Static means this variable belongs to the class itself and not the individual object. So when you create a static block, that means it belongs to class itself. Private means it can be only accessed inside this class. It's an access modifier. Private is basically it can be only accessed inside this class. And code inside the static block run only once automatically when the class is loaded for the first time. So whatever we have added in this static block, that will be loaded once whenever we instantiate the object for those. So whenever you run the project, it will load all the properties. Whatever properties we require, that will be automatically loaded in our project. It will automatically create a file input stream object named FIS. So if you see, this is the object which will be created. After that, it will open the file src main resources config.properties. So we have provided the path of the file. So that object will know what is the file path, where is the config.properties file present. So it will get that properties file. And if the file is not present or it cannot be opened, in that case IO exception will occur. And in logs, you can see those exceptions. If you provide some incorrect path, or let's say file doesn't exist, for those exception, IO exception will occur. And this properties object will hold all the key value pairs from your config file. So this is basically a properties file static block. Then we have created one method get property. What that method will do? So when this properties dot load will be called, what this properties dot load will do? It will read the content of the config.properties file using the FIS string. So in our code, if you see properties.load, and in which we are passing this file input stream FIS object. It will load the data. It will read the content of config.properties file. It fills the properties object with the key value pair. So all the key value pairs which are present in config.properties will be stored in it. And this is basically exception handling. So this is a exception handling. After that, we have created get property method. If you see inside this get property method, we are passing one string, that is key. So let's say I want base URI. So I have to pass which key? Base URI key. If I want token, I have to just pass token as a key, and it will return that token value by using properties dot get property method. So this is basically used to fetch and get the property. Static means you can call it without creating the object. Config.get property, in which we have to pass key for which we want the value. Static means we don't have to create object of this class, that I will show you. So whenever we use static, we don't have to use object of this class. That's why this method is static. We can directly call it by using class name config.get property. It will give you that specific property value. That's the benefit of using static keyword. It will take a string key, whatever key you want to fetch the value for, and it will return the value which is mapped to that key from the properties object. So now we have created the config reader. So that is the config reader class that will be used to read the data from properties file by using its object. But now we have to create config.properties file. So config reader.java class we have created in com.api.config. Now we have to already created this config.properties file in resources folder, which is currently blank. In this we have to add the data. So what values and key we have to add here? So first one is base URI. So let's say I have to just use it like this, base URI, and what is the value? We have to put equal to https gorest.co.in/public/v2. So that is the base URI. So if you see in our Postman collection, this is the base URI. That value I have placed it as a base URI in config.properties. And similarly, we have to place the token as well. Token bearer is a keyword. If you see in our Postman collection also, in headers, it goes as bearer token and the value of token. So now let me just add that. So currently I will just add some dummy value, token equal to bearer space, and let's say some dummy value. I am just adding some dummy test 123xxx value. But when we actually hit the API, I will just add the correct value there. But in just for as of now, we just understand that how the values are fetched correctly from config.properties. So we have created config.properties file, and config reader.java file will be reading those values from the config.properties. But now how to verify whether whatever code we have written is correct or not, whether it is able to read the values from property files correctly or not. To verify that, what we will do? So, where we are going to use those values in user service class, user CRUD service class. If you see the diagram, we have added values in config.properties. We have written the code for config reader, which will read the values from config.properties, and then user CRUD service class will use those values. So in this class, we have to use base URI, token, etc. So I will not create this method that we will see in coming session, but we will create this user CRUD service file today. And we will just check whether we are able to fetch the values by using config reader and config.properties. So let me just create one class. Inside this com.api.service, we will create a new class. I am naming it as user CRUD service. CRUD means create, read, update and delete. So I have created that class. Now inside that class, we have to fetch those values from config.properties by using config reader. So that will verify that it is successful code for config reader and config.properties. So I will create one main method inside this, public static void main. This is just to verify that our class is able to read those values. Public static void main string args. I will just define one string, let's say base URI, one more string that is token, and this value should be picked up from which class? config.properties file. But to read the data from config.properties file, where we have created the method? In configreader.java. Which method we have created? Get property method. What type of method it is? Static method. So if it's a static method, we don't have to create the object of this configurator class. We can directly use the class name. So what I will do, in user CRUD service, I will directly use class name config reader dot get property, and which value we want to fetch for which key. First one is base URI. So first one is, let's say, base URI, and second one is for token, equal to again config reader class name dot get property, in which we have to pass the key name token. So currently we have placed only two things, that is base URI and token inside this config.properties. If you see, in config.properties, base URI and tokens are present, so that in user CRUD service class we are fetching that value. So config reader, that is the class name, dot get property method, and inside this method we are passing the key as a base URI. So it will return properties dot get property key. So it will pass base URI here. It will check properties object. So in properties dot load, we have stored this FIS object that contains the path of this config dot properties file. So from here it will get the data. It will be stored inside this FIS object, and this FIS object will contain all those key value pairs. And then get property method, we will pass which key value we want. If I pass base URI, it will fetch the value of base URI. If I pass token, it will fetch the token value. That's what we have defined here. So it will fetch those value and it will store it in base URI and token. Now next step is we can simply print those values. System.out.println, and I can just type, let's say base URI is plus, this is the base URI I want to print. So if I able to print this value in console, that means it is reading correctly. And similarly for token as well. System.out.println token is is token value. So let's see, when we execute this file, whether in console we are able to see the values of config.properties file, that is the base URI and token values. So let's see, let me just run as Java application. Let's run this file as Java application. So it will run the method. Let's execute this file and see the console. So it will start, it will launch the file. And if you see the console output, in the console output we can see base URI is, this is the base URI value, and token is, this is the token value. So it is successfully able to fetch the values from config.properties file by using config.reader.java get property method, and that is placed inside this user CRUD service. So in user CRUD service.java file, we are able to fetch the values by using config.reader.java. So that is the config.reader.java class which we have to define. It will simply get the file path where config.properties file is, and it will simply create a object of file input stream. Properties.load will store that information whatever present in config.properties, and then by using get property method we can pass the key value and it will return that properties value. That's what we have performed here. So what we have done in today's session, we have focused on this part, config.properties, config reader, and fetching the values of config.properties inside the user CRUD service class. In next session we will design this user CRUD service and POJOs as well. So let's meet in our next session. Thanks everyone.